All right. Just a short little video of me trying to film the night sky. There's supposed to be a lot of shooting stars, and don't know if that's true or not, but I kind of wanted to give it a bit of a go. And I thought about something else while we're out here, because it's been a minute since I uploaded anything, and the main reason for that is just that I've been kind of spending a lot of time in this story writing space. And my really big challenge I've noticed is that I don't know how to talk to you guys about this story without kind of giving too much away. Like, I've talked to a lot of other people about this. It's like a general sort of pitch for like, what is it that I want to, what is the story that I'm trying to tell? What are the big moments? What's the overall plot? What's the setting? What are some of the characters? Like, I'm starting to, I want to say nail it down, but I'm starting to get like more and more of a sense of it all the time. But if I lay it all out in like one, like here's like the total outline of the whole story, it loses, I think, some of the excitement and some of the interest in it. So I'm trying to figure out like how can I sort of describe it in more of like an elevator pitch sort of fashion to say, here's the story, here's roughly the characters, here's something that this is what we're talking about. And I guess you guys now in this video, you're going to be the test subjects for how to have that conversation as I'm walking back and forth out here. And you guys can sort of hopefully give me some feedback and say, well, I don't know, it sounds kind of boring. Or you could say, sounds very exciting. I'm, totally would want to know more about this. Whatever your feelings are, I suppose. Like, it's important for me to have a sense of it. So what I'm working with are these two sort of characters. I guess you could have two main characters, but one of them we're probably going to be following up a fair bit more. Will and Neela, and they are brother and sister, and they start out in their hometown of Gorath, which is the only town in a place called the Mudlands. And the Mudlands has this feature, as the name sort of suggests, that there's sort of mud, an endless flood of mud that just sort of comes up out of the ground, that just continuously sort of flows like a slow river down through that region of the world. And it makes life super difficult. This is like a working class environment in my brain. It's working class, lower class. So the people who live there and work there, they're not moving away. Like, their families have been there, that's what they do. And they basically farm this clay that's underneath the mud, this red clay that they use to make pottery, and they burn bricks. The bricks are sold off or farmed off in some other way to the capital city of the kingdom, which is called Sirk, and S-I-R-K. And they build huge walls. Sirk is a city that's built of sort of concentric ring walls. So, walls upon walls upon, like, they keep expanding the city with larger and larger rings, which is an insane project in many ways. But yeah, it's the people in the Mudlands that are sort of supplying this. And obviously that means if you're a young man in this space, you're going to be strong. Like, you're digging up this clay with your hands, you're carrying the bricks around, because there are no roads here. There's one road at the center of town, and it's maintained by people bringing in little pebbles and little rocks that they find that have been caught in the mud. But otherwise, it's just all fluid all the time. And sometimes the mud is not that deep. Sometimes it's, a whole human could disappear into it. So it's just this continuous sort of problem that they're having. But it's life, and they've accepted it, except obviously for our main characters who long for, something more than this, because it's such a predictable life to be living, right? Neela is sort of destined to be making more pottery, which in itself is fine craft, but you know, she wants to sort of go on more of an adventure. And both of them combined have like a really cool talent where they're good at thinking through problems, which plays itself out in the sense that they're good at finding things. So when people lose stuff in the Mudlands, these are sort of the two, you know, the brother and sister duo that you're coming to, right? Farmer loses a pig. The only animal that can really live in the Mudlands are pigs, obviously. So, you know, they figure out, like, where could it have gone? You can't really track a pig because, as I said, like, the ground is sort of ever-changing. So the idea of tracking it down just doesn't make a lot of sense. But there are other ways to try and figure out where it might have gone. And this reputation sort of outgrows, especially Will, who sort of becomes, you know, his reputation for finding things outgrows even the borders of the Mudlands, and he sort of, you know, gets to go to the capital city through one route, and Neela gets there through a slightly different route, but they both get to leave the Mudlands eventually for the story to sort of start. The kingdom itself is ruled by these quite, I said it's self-absorbed, but I feel like being royalty, it almost comes with that sort of idea that you might be a little bit self-absorbed. But they're people anyway that have like a proud history that they care a lot about. And they can trace their history really well because these ring walls have been built by different generations of kings and queens. So, you know, not necessarily one king per wall, but because they're long projects, they're huge walls, it takes a long time. But, you know, you kind of have an idea about like who started it and who finished it and how old the kingdom is based on that. That's a sort of tremendous pride, and it's also sort of part of the mythos of the kingdom, is that this is what sort of brought them out of whatever, you know, pre-civilization they were living in before. Different clans now, you know, united under this one kingdom, and, you know, they're very proud of that. But Neela coming to the capital, and she ends up sort of being an apprentice at the library there. And the idea is that she discovers that there's a big problem with the history of this city. And more specifically, she realizes that some of the inner walls just have to be older than what this sort of acknowledged story is. And that becomes a big problem, right? That's like a huge, I've said it, for the first really big source of tension in this story comes from this encounter or this sort of battle between, you know, the royal narrative and the fact that a couple of people that are too curious, in a sense, start to take a look at some of this stuff. Now, all of this is building up to a much, much, much bigger story. But this is the part where I'm like not sure how to, or if I should introduce the next part of it, or if, you know, without giving too much away. So maybe for the minute I just won't do that, and I'll just kind of leave it at that and get a sense of what you guys think. These are sort of my two main characters. I wanted to have another character which is a sort of a knight who, or at least a swordsman of swords that has, that basically has, let's go another way. Hold on. Train watch. Always cool. So yeah, our champion swordsman has something that, you know, they obviously won't necessarily recognize as arthritis, but his joints are just ruined. So you can't really pick up anything more than a stick, but he knows like all the moves, and he has all the technique. Like, he is super skilled. It might take a while for people to accept that in the story, but, you know, he knows what he's doing. Whereas our, you know, Will is obviously not a swordsman, not any, like, he's from the Mudlands, right? So what would you know about that? But he's super strong, right? Because, again, he's a mud farmer, so requires some strength. He's carrying around bricks and lifting up clay and all the rest of it. So naturally, strong, but you know, without any kind of technique like that. So there's some encounter between these characters and some evolution there, and I'm pretty sure I want like a really deeply, call it schizophrenic character that's just totally lost his marbles and is like the town drunk that you find in the inn or the tavern and just, you know, rambles on forever and ever. Just 'cause I think that kind of character, just I can imagine in my brain how that could be fun and interesting. So yeah, like, again, all of this stuff has to be written down in some interesting way. Hold on, another train. Nice. Obviously, the strength of all of this stuff depends on my ability to write this down and kind of like make it interesting and make it exciting, which let's see what happens. But yeah, that's kind of like the beginning of it. I'll see if I might throw in some of the illustrations I've had made for the two starting cities. And then we'll see what happens after that. Like, I'm never really sure how much to share or how to present this in a reasonable fashion. But yeah, that's kind of how I want things to get started. So I don't know. Make some comment down below. Tell me if it even makes sense. Like, obviously it makes sense in my head, but I don't know how good I am at transferring that on to other people. So let me know. I'm excited. I'm having a really great time with it, even if it is an absolutely crazy project. So thank you guys. Peace, and I'll see you in the next one.